Thank you, everybody, for being here. We've got people from all around the world, and that is absolutely amazing. So every year, many of us make promises to ourselves, resolutions, a variety of ways that we set our goals for the new year. We are going to take a little time to reflect on that and go into small groups. And we figured this month for Promise, we would hop into small groups and do some discussion and conversation, because we often kick off our events with people buzzing, whether in person or in the chat like we do. So we're going to extend that and make use of that good energy. So we're going to take a little time to reflect about what motivates you right now. Many of us have already have our goals in mind. Our goal right now is to help brainstorm, find that word or short phrase that will sum up your promise to yourself right now in this moment. So we're going to grab a piece of paper, and the paper is just to kind of brainstorm. The paper is not yet for what we're going to do later with Paula. This is just so we can write down 3 to 5 things that you want to do differently, or anything on this list of things. You know, is there a common theme, a big goal, a small goal? What motivates you? What could you use more or less of? We're going to come up with that list while we're discussing, and we're going to help each other do that before we pop back out to the large group and then let Paula take it away. Very good. Now it's time for Paula to join us and take over the Zoom with such good activity. Introducing Paula Wallace, our creative facilitator today. Paula is an artist, illustrator, and published author. She explores the arts with all sorts of people, including, at times, the most vulnerable: adults, children with disabilities, or elderly immigrants and refugees, frequently those whose bodies or circumstances may have failed them, but whose souls are fed by creative practice. Welcome, Paula.
Hi, everybody. I'm joining you from my kitchen. It feels weird to be doing a Zoom at home. It's not generally where I do them. But I suppose it's appropriate today that we're talking about these words that are about ourselves, our goals, our desires, moving forward in 2021, and thinking about them in terms of promise. When I moved to Omaha from Chicago quite a while ago now, everything in my life was topsy-turvy. And I had the good fortune of meeting Susan Koenig, who is an attorney and coach here in Omaha, a wonderful human being. And I did a summer workshop with her. Part of what we did was to we were looking at ourselves and trying to get a focus, a direction, but also looking outward, looking at other people and seeing in them traits that we admired. So one of the first exercises we did was to make a list of words. I still have that list. I didn't send it to Kim to be part of a screen share, but it's a list of characteristics that I admired in people. And when you look at the words that you've written down, I wonder, how many of those words are things that you admire in other people. Maybe it's that kind of determination, or it's that focus. In our small group session, we were talking about some of the words that people were coming up with on their list. And it is remarkable how when we find those things, those qualities in other people, we have to take into account that we already possess some of that power because we can recognize it. As you work on your list and think about how you'll manifest it in some form in our exercise today, it becomes a kind of meditation. in my studio, I work primarily in oil, but today I suggested you have watercolors. So I have a pan of watercolors that I've used, but not everybody has that. If you have a pencil, if you have a Sharpie and a blank piece of paper, you can do a lot. I decided that my word, one of the words that I would work on today is persistence. And part of that comes from seeing my dad yesterday. My dad is in hospice. And I always consider it a great visit if I get even one word from my dad. And yesterday, his word was yes. And my dad is still a pretty persistent fellow. And how much yes is part of persistence. We tell ourselves yes, and we keep moving forward. So if you have a watercolor brush and some watercolor available, a watercolor pencil, a marker, I invite you to write your word. Just write it out, however, whatever you have. And then I want you to hold it up to the screen. I want to see what you write. Sometimes just writing it once. You write it once, and then, this is going to be backwards to you. Write it once and then go over it. Then go over it again and again and again. Build up on it. Sometimes there are days when we don't, we can't really write it. We don't feel the mystery, but you happen to be looking through a magazine or a newspaper. I found a phrase, I cut out phrases sometimes and keep them on hand because they mean something to me. And I think I'll be able to use this later. So let's say you're sitting there in your apartment, office, workspace, and you're not necessarily feeling like writing anything, but you happen to look down at a magazine and you see a phrase. So this one, I don't know if it'll show up. That doesn't mean it's simple. I have one that I cut out of a Wall Street Journal before some of you were born. And it said, hide from risk and you hide from its reward. And I still have that section of the Wall Street Journal with that headline cut out. So I think there are different ways that you can put that idea down, put that thought down. So this was, just thinking about my visit with Dad yesterday and him saying yes. It's not very complicated. It's just little dots of color. And you can do that with a pencil. You can do that with a Sharpie. You can connect them. Or maybe they're not in focus yet. So they're still separate little pieces. I sent Kim two, they're very vertical watercolors that I did this morning for my morning doodle. And it's about persistence. And when I'm working on projects, I save all kinds of scraps of paper because I think, oh, that's interesting. I might be able to use that, which usually means I end up with a big pile of crap in the studio. But this time I saved them for today. I knew that I would probably use them for something. And because one of the words I chose persistence and the other word yes, I was thinking about what does that look like? So I went from that handwritten word persistent, that dotted yes, and I thought about how sometimes persistence can be really difficult. And it's like you're making a climb. So this doodle this morning was a staircase, an endless staircase. It almost seems like a rope bridge that you'd find over a ravine or something. And it also made me think about my word more, in that sometimes we're invited to participate or to be able to reach our goal with some help. That we have to sometimes be encouraged to climb that long, impossible staircase. And maybe you're a little nervous. You're thinking of, you're like that little kid at the bottom. He's got his backpack on, and that staircase seems like forever. But he's got a buddy, and his buddy is started, and that buddy's going to take him the rest of the way. So it's not so scary. It's that persistence is even more possible when you have a partner on the way. So in keeping with that, and as often appears in my work, there is a ladder. And this ladder seems impossibly long, and we don't know who's holding it. But saying yes to it, being willing to climb up that ladder into the dark reaches, that persistence also makes that effort worth the climb. When, I don't know how many of you have seen illuminated letters. An example of that would be the St. John's Bible that was on display at Joslin here in Omaha a number of years ago. An illuminated letter is decorated by the calligrapher and the artist, and it essentially tells the whole story of a text, but it's the initial letter of the story. So it's elaborate and beautiful, it has all this stuff going on, but in many, many cases, that illuminated letter, the light is on it, it's literally illuminated, it reveals the content of the story. So as you're looking at your word, maybe take that first letter and elaborate on it, doodle on it more, give it some muscle.
Paula, I see your picture as maybe that's you at the bottom and your father climbing the stairs, just because of the time in your life and his, and it's, you know, like you're almost in letting him say yes and go on, and but it's a beautiful metaphor.
It could be. Thanks. I think, Kim, you have another image. It's just a watercolor. Yes, that one. Yes. And that was just watercolor. It was all wet and I wanted to dry out the pan. So I brushed it on a scrap of paper. And then I took my eraser and wrote yes. I tried to remove the paint. So I think there are so many different ways that you can take that time at your desk or at the end of the day at the kitchen table and just meditate on what your intention is. I always say when people visit my studio, especially kids, the tool I use the most in my studio, I mean, they see buckets and buckets of paintbrushes. And there are a ridiculous number of pencils. But the tool I use the most is this little, well, it's broken now, this nub of an eraser. Because there are very few things that just happen right off the blocks. That's the beauty of a pencil. That's the beauty of the eraser end. That we get to put something down, but we can fix it or change it. And when you're working on a drawing or design or an idea or a letter something that you've done in pencil, and then you erase it like this yes, you have, it makes me think of the word pentimento. So you have this hint of what was below. So it's never really left, but it becomes part of the scaffolding of a painting. So even those things that were mistakes or that you changed your mind on are no longer important. They're still part of the scaffolding of an idea. Thanks everybody for joining us. I would like to see all of your words come into Kim's mailbox and that we can share them with each other. It's been wonderful having conversation with you about these things. I hope you're inspired too with your, that you can all bring it to fruition. Like that your intention, your aspiration can be made real and in relationship. Bravi, everybody.